Okay. Yep. Good evening, everyone. Just open my YouTube chat. All right. Okay. So also let me just share my screen. Hmm. Yep. So good evening to all of you. Right. Watching the live session. Okay. So. ठीक है. Hello, excited for today's session. Yep. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So welcome to day 3 of this HTML and CSS bootcamp. So over the past 2 days, we have seen many tags of HTML. Right, we were covering HTML on the previous 2 days, and we saw multiple use cases of multiple tags. We also saw what semantic tags are. We also kind of had an overview of what HTML could do to a web page, right? Now, from today onwards, we will be starting with the CSS part, and yeah, today we'll be starting with the CSS part. And before that, we'll cover this video tag that was remaining yesterday. After that, we'll be covering the CSS part of it, and that's where things are gonna get interesting. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's start to cover the leftover topic for yesterday. Before that, any doubts? Anyone from the previous 2 days? Just put in your doubts, and I'll be more than happy to take it. Otherwise, we'll just move ahead from here. Yeah? Any doubts? Anyone? Good evening, Sarvesh. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, we are going to cover video tag just now. Okay. Okay. So let's just cover video tag first, and then let's start with it. Okay. Now, so for covering video tag, again the syntax is same like we tried to cover the video tag yesterday, but what we were doing is we were trying to fetch some external links. That's not how it works. As I told you yesterday, it's also we have to give it some video which is locally present in our system. Right? So I'll do one thing. I'll come to this, and I'll just uncomment the. Okay, this is fine. Video source and this thing. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll go to my local system. I'll maybe fetch some link. I think this must be an mp4 file. Let me just check the properties. Okay, it's .mkb, not mp4. Not here as well. I think all these are mkb files, not mp4. Anything here? I don't think so. Videos. So let's do one thing. Let's just head over to Google, and let's just download any random mp4 file. mp4 file. I'll say download. Okay. Now here we have the sample mp4 file. So what we'll do here is let's download this. I think this is the smallest one. So this is just a sample mp4 file. What I'll do here is I'll just download it. It's downloading, and we'll wait for it to finish, and it has been downloaded. Okay, so I'm assuming this must be in my download section now. Okay. Let me just head over to my downloads. No. How do I download this? Okay. Now here I have an option. Yeah, now it's downloaded. Okay, so now what I'll do here is I'll quickly just grab this file, and I'll paste it in my this folder. What's that? HTML CSS folder. So I'll come to my desktop. I'll come to my desktop. I'll come to HTML CSS folder. Uh, yeah, and I'll paste this file here. Okay, and yeah, so this is the mp4 file format. Now this should work. I'll come to my VS Code. I'll remove this link, and I'll copy this link. I'll right click, I'll copy the relative path. Okay, and I'll paste it here. Now I'll go live. I'll say open with live server, and just refresh it maybe once. Still not there. Do we have controls here? Okay, instead of this, let me put video controls. Yeah, video controls. Now we have the source, we have the file name, and yeah, we have the source and the type. Okay, now let's check. Okay, so see, now we are able to get this video, right? So what mistake we were doing, we were not putting this controls attribute. Now this attribute is very important because it helps us to control and or maneuver the file that you're having. Just like you see some options here, right? You have the play option, you have the sound option, you have the option to do it in full screen, right? Or you have this option to also download or control the playback speed. So if I want to, I can just directly play it in 2x speed, right? So we can do this. So again, just recapping, for a video tag, you have to have a video that is in your local system, right? That is in your local system, nothing else, right? There are things like called as an iframe, which helps us to have some external links as well, but that for now we'll not do it. We'll do it in the upcoming sessions. Okay, maybe tomorrow or day after, when we'll make a project in that we'll try to implement that thing, right? Clear? So this is the syntax. Video controls, we present the source and the type. So this is an mp4 type, and obviously a video will be in mp4 it will always be in an mp4 format, most probably. So that's how we can do it. That if you want to have mkb, you can just write mkb here, and you can present the files, right? The format is up to you, and you can experiment with it, and you can just play along with it, and just try to see some modifications if you can do it, right? Maybe try to add some cool effects to it if you want to, although that is pretty much possible with css, but maybe we can have some attributes that helps us to do that. Okay. Awesome. So with that being said, let's now move to day 3 .html. Okay, and today the most important, the most interesting part of this bootcamp is that we are going to start with css. Okay, we are going to start with css. Anyone who will tell me the full form of css? Yep, anyone? Full form of css, anyone? Yeah, we are going to start with css. Okay, we have an answer. Nagushri, cascading style sheet. Priya, cascaded style sheets. Aditya, cascading style sheets. Okay, oh, cascading style. Yeah. So as answered by most of you, The full form of CSS is nothing but cascading style sheet, right? Again, why do we need CSS? To make our websites, or I'll say web apps, look pleasant, or I'd say attractive, right? So far what we have done is we have kind of made the skeleton of a web page, right? We have made, okay, so if you wanted an input box, we have made an input box. If you wanted a table, we have also made a table as well. Similarly, if you wanted a button, we made a button as well. But now the question, and this all we were able to do with the help of HTML. Now the question comes up here is, how do I decorate these? How do I style these? And that's where CSS comes into picture. With the help of CSS, you'll be able to enhance the user interface, or I'd say UI in short form. Okay, to enhance the UI of a web page. Okay, so now you must be wondering, okay, since so you told that, okay, we can use CSS to decorate or to make it more pleasant, to decorate it, to style it, things like that. The first question that comes up into our mind is, how do I link my CSS with my HTML, right? Because it is very important to link these CSS files to the corresponding HTML file. Okay, now there are three main, I would say, methods to link your CSS. The first one is nothing but the inline CSS, what we call it. The second one is the internal CSS. The last and the most widely used one is the external CSS. Out of this, I would say this is most widely used. Okay, so there are majorly three categories of linking your CSS: inline, internal, and you have something called as external linking. Okay, now first let's cover how to link your CSS in an inline way. Okay, so what I'll do here is, see, I'll not make a new what do you say, HTML code altogether. What I'll do here is I'll quickly just copy this code, because this code is a code which we all have done together in the class itself. It will be much more easier for you to relate. I'll copy this code and I will paste it here. Okay, now using this file, we are going to add some CSS, make it look good, and try to see some cool looking properties that CSS has to offer us. Okay, and most importantly, first thing that we'll do is we'll use an inline CSS, right? What will we do? We will use inline CSS. Okay, now let me just first tell you the syntax to have an inline CSS. Okay, for using an inline CSS, you have to use a tag called as a style tag. Okay, now each and every CSS property that you use in an inline CSS should come under this style tag, and this is where you will write your CSS properties. Okay, let's try to implement this. So we'll come to the code and I'll come here I'll make I'll make a tag called as style. Okay. Acha. Now, once we are in this in between these lines, right, it's where we write our CSS. Okay. So the next question that comes up here is how can we add CSS, or how we already know how can we link CSS, but how to add properties, right? How to, let's suppose I want to make this header, I want to maybe have a background color, or I want to maybe change the font size, font weight, things like that. So how will I do that? Okay. So what you do is let's suppose let's take header only. Let's suppose I want to apply a background property on header. So what I'll do is I'll type in the keyword called as header and these two curly brackets. Getting it? I've typed in the keyword called as header, these two curly brackets. Now, see, CSS have the CSS has many properties to make it what do you say? Kind of, design your web page, right? Oh, sorry, my bad. So this is exactly very good pointed out by Webber. This is not inline. So this is internal, right? So first we are covering internal, then we'll cover inline. We'll come to inline after that. First, let's cover internal, right? So don't get confused. First, we are covering internal. My bad, right? Very good pointed out by Webber. Hats off to you, man. Okay. So after this, right? After this, we give the tag that we want to do. Let's suppose I want to apply some tags, some style in header file. So what I'll do is, the first thing I want to do is apply a background color. So what I'll do, I'll write in background color. Let's suppose I want to give a background color of aqua. The color is up to you, whatever you want to give. And now if I come here, or let me just open the live server first. Open with live server. Okay. Now can you see this effect that is coming up on this header of the page? Right now, is it more distinguished? Can we, okay, by seeing this we can first figure out, okay, that this is the header of the page. And why is it having a background color of aqua? Because we provided it a background color of aqua like this. Similarly, if you want to, you can apply a border. I'll say border. So for applying border, you have this property called as border, and you have majorly three things, right? First is the depth, or I would say the width. That means I'll say 2 pixels. So a pixel is a unit. It's so as we have any other unit like centimeters, meters, inches. Pixel is a unit that is used by CSS. So 2 pixels means the width would be 2 in terms of this unit. Then I'll have options to make it. Then I'll have options to make it dotted, because if you're having a border, it can be dotted, it can be lined, circular, and any of that sort. So I'll say 2 pixels, solid, and then I'll have to specify then the color of my background. Let's say I want to have it in red color. So see, now if I come here, this has a border which is red in color, which is solid, and which has a width of 2 pixels. If you want to, you can play around with it. Let's suppose instead of 2 pixels, I want it to be 6 pixels, and instead of solid, I want it to be dotted. And now if I come here again, you'll see the difference, right? This time, it is not in a solid format. It has dots. The width is increased. It is not 2 pixels, now it is 6 pixels. And the color is red. That is if we did not change. If you want to change the color as well, you can do it. So let's suppose I want the color to be green, right? So I'll have it in green color. However, we'll come to the units later on. So pixels, there's nothing called as better. It depends on what scenarios you are currently in, and it depends on what situation it is, right? REM is generally used to make it a more responsive way, but pixels is again an absolute unit, so it is helpful while making short adjustments to your tags. Although we'll come to that, right? Okay, so this is how we apply a border. We have seen border, we have seen background color. Okay, now apart from that, we can also change the text, the color of the text, right? We can also change the color of the text. How do we do that? We just have the property called as color, and here I can specify which color I want to. Let's suppose I want it to be violet, and let this be solid only. Okay, now you'll see that the text color this time has also changed, right? So what is the difference between a background color and a normal? So what is the difference between background color and color? Background color is, as the name suggests, it is the background, it is the color of the background. But whereas if you only specify color, it will be the text color, right? At what range of pixels we can apply? So Sarvesh, it's up to you. There's no limit of pixels. You can give n number of pixels you want to, right? But you have to limit, like you'll get a sense of it, like how it's suppose let's suppose I want to give pixels instead of 6, I'll give 600, right? So this will now be 600. So this is the border now, right? So it's there's no limit to it. Obviously it won't look good if you try to increase the width, but this is how it looks like. Okay, getting it? Okay, and similarly you, if you want to instead of that, let's suppose this time I want to add styling to my list. So what I'll do here is I'll target my list. So I'll do ul, that means unordered list. And let's suppose what I want to do, let's suppose you want to kind of change the color of the list. I'll say color, and I'll say blue. So this time my all the unordered list, right? Why all the unordered list are getting blue in color? Because I specifically chose ul, and that is the reason why all the ul tags have blue in color. They are blue in color. Getting it? Is it clear? Similarly, you can do it for ol as well. Ordered list, and which property? Let's suppose you want to apply color, you can apply color. Let's suppose you want to maybe increase the font size. So I can just say font size. I can specify in pixels as well. I'll say 40 pixels, right? So this OL is it's a bit bigger in size because I specifically have mentioned that, hey, the font size needs to be 40 pixels. Again, the pixel is again an absolute unit here, just like any other unit you have heard of, like centimeters, meters, inches. That's how we in CSS we have this unit called as pixels, right? Why does it enlarge? Because I've used font size. Why is it red in color? Because I specifically mentioned, hey, the color should be red. Okay, I can also apply border here. So if I want to apply border, I can apply border 2 pixels, solid, and black. Okay, and if I want to apply background color, I can also apply background color to be, let's suppose, B. Okay, so this time you see this effect here. It has a background color, it has a border, it has increased font size, and the color of the text is also red in color. Utpal, it is not necessarily always the case. It depends on machine to machine, but I've observed that in 90% of the cases, one REM is 16 pixels. But again, it is not fixed always. It depends on the width of your screen. It depends on your operating system as well. But 90 to 95% I've observed that one REM is always 16 pixels. Awesome. Clear, everyone? And similarly, now it's your turn to play around with it. We have multiple tags. As in homework, what do? You can apply some properties in this table table tag, right? Target this table tag, or if you don't want to do it in table tag, you have this thing called as a form, right? And you can use a form. So I'll just start it for you. I'll have a form, and this form I'll just apply a border so that it's visible, right? Border of 2 pixels, solid. and the color as well. By the way, color is optional. If you don't give a color here, by default it will take black. So see, I have not mentioned any color here. By default, this form will be having a black background color, black border color. Okay. Acha. So now we again let me also introduce you to two most important properties, that are margins and padding. So before that, I'll just apply the property to you, then I'll show it to you what it means. So I'll say margin. I'll say if not more than 8 pixels at least, right? And padding, I'll say also 4 pixels. Okay. Now if you could see, this has slightly, okay, let me also increase the margin so that it's more visible to you. I'll do it 18 pixels. Yeah, now it makes sense. Now, as you can see, right, I've applied margins to it. Okay. Now what is a margin? So in simple words, let's suppose assume this to be your body. Okay. Now margins, and let's suppose this inside a body I have this let's suppose a paragraph tag. Okay. Now margins are the, if I apply a margin here inside this. Now as the name suggests, margins, these are the external boundaries. These are the external boundaries. If I apply margin to be 14 pixels, that means that from all the 4 direction it will have a gap of 14 pixels. 14 pixels from here, 14 pixels from here, 14 pixels from here, and from all the 4 directions it will have a gap of 14 pixels. Okay. And whereas padding, let's suppose this is your paragraph and this is your paragraph tag. I'll name it paragraph tag. And inside your paragraph tag, you have some content. Okay. Now, padding is the internal spacing. So let's suppose you have a content here. Okay. Let me take a box. Let's suppose you have written something, right? You have written something here. Now, padding is the internal space. If I apply padding to be 2 pixels, then this means that the internal boundaries, right? The internal boundaries will have a gap of 2 pixels each. 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and 2 pixels. So in short, margin is the external boundaries, whereas padding can be considered as an internal boundary. Getting it? Now, I'll do one thing. I'll quickly open the inspect panel. Now, what is an inspect panel? It is just a developer console. If you are seeing it for the first time, don't get overwhelmed. It is something which you'll be using a lot once you progress in your development journey. Okay. Now, here, I'll come to elements and I'll scroll to the bottom part of it. To give you a more clearer picture, this one. Open the inspect panel. Yeah. Now, to give you a more clearer picture, I'll show you this. So I'll select this. Okay. Now see, can you see this margin? Right? As you can see you can also see on the screen that there is an orange bar that is highlighted. Right? So margin, as I told you, is the external boundaries between your form and the table. Whereas padding, padding is the internal space within the form, the space between the content, right? The username, password, number, submit button, the space between the content is padding. To make it more visible, I'll increase the padding for you. So I'll do padding also to be 14 pixels. It will not look good, obviously, but see, now you see this thing. I'll come here and see this padding. Right? This is the internal space, whereas margins are external spaces. Margin is this. This is the border, right? We have applied border, 2 pixels solid black, and these are the paddings. So everyone in the chat box, is the difference between a margin and a padding clear to you? Yes or no? And everyone, I want you guys to flood the chat box with yes or no. If it is clear, yes. If it is not clear, no. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, yes. Clear, clear. Yes, clear, clear. Clear, clear, clear. Okay. Tashin says no, sir. Please explain. Okay. So see, Tashin. In short, in layman terms, padding. Right? Let. Okay. So there are two different things, right? Padding and margin. Margin is the external space. So what I mean by that is, if I come here, if I let's suppose this to be your body and this to be your input tag. Okay. Margin is nothing but this space. This is margin. Okay. Whereas padding, let's suppose this is your input box and you have some content here in the input box. Padding is nothing but this space, internal space. So this is called as padding, whereas this thing is called as a margin. It cannot be more simpler than this. Margin is the external space because this is the main tag, right? This is external, and padding is internal. This is the main tag. It is inside of this. Yes, Sarvesh, you can add paddings, you can add margins in all the tags that you want. It's a universal tag. Okay. This is all about margin and padding. Okay. Now, I have a question for you, for all of you here. Let's suppose I have a paragraph tag. I'll make a paragraph tag actually. I'll make a paragraph tag. Obviously not in the style, in the body. Paragraph tag. I'll say this is para 1. I'll have another tag. I'll say this is para 2, right? And obviously, see, if I want to apply style to it, I'll just select a paragraph tag. I'll say background color to be blue violet, let's suppose. Okay? And as you can see here, this paragraph would be blue in color. Okay? Now an open question to all of you here. So I have two paragraphs here, right? Paragraph 1 as well as paragraph 2. Now my manager comes to me. I'm a developer somewhere. My manager comes to me and says that, here, Ritik, this is one thing. I want different stylings to both the paragraphs. That means my paragraph 1 should be in blue violet color and my paragraph 2 should be in yellow color. So how do you think can I achieve that? Because if I'm mentioning paragraph, all the paragraph elements, all the paragraph tags will be selected and applied the property. But this time, I don't want to do that. I want to specifically assign each individual properties, CSS properties, to each and every one of it. Okay, so I have an answer from Utpal. Sayank Sinha says, okay, that's another approach, but okay. Mark Prabhu says we can use an ID. Okay, Ratna Aditya Gupta. Is there any background? Oh, is it? Just let me know once if it is. Dikshita says okay. Vaibhav says div. Ratna says. Acha, for all of you who are saying div, I have again a counter question for you. Let's suppose I have two divs. Then what? And I need to provide different properties to both the divs. Then what? Then what will you do? Yeah. Then what will you do? Satnik mana, okay. Satnik mana sayang, okay. So for all those who are saying class and ID, congratulations, you're on the right track. I think most of us were there. And to be specific, these are called as selectors. These are called as selectors. As the name suggests, selectors are used to uniquely identify your tags. That simply means that if I have two paragraph tags, by using selectors, I can uniquely identify them. Okay. Now, there are two major categories of selectors. One is, as said by all of you in the chat box here, one is the class, the other is the ID. Okay. Now, the class and the ID both can be used interchangeably when, now there's the condition here, interchangeably until and unless you're only covering HTML and CSS. Once you cover JavaScript, you'll see a whole new difference between a class and an ID. Because in JavaScript, you want to reference these elements, right? And to get a reference, using your document or get elements, right? And when you get the reference of these, it has a different structure altogether, right? But in a broad overview, one difference that I like to tell you between class and ID is that IDs are unique. That means it is always suggested that if you want to specifically have unique elements or unique tags, you just use ID. Whereas classes can group some similar tags. Example I'll tell you. Let's suppose I have 3 paragraphs. Okay? And these 2 paragraphs I want a similar CSS property, whereas this I want a different CSS property. So I can group these 2 in a same class and apply a common property, and this could be an ID, a different ID. Okay, enough of the theory part, let's get to the action. Okay, so what I'll do here is, okay, I have two I'll comment this out for now. I have 2 paragraphs. Okay, now first let's see an example of an ID. So for having an ID, you give in the keyword called as ID, then you specify the name of the ID. Let's suppose I want to specify para1, and to this ID I'll give an ID as para2. Acha. Now, if you want to reference this para1, how do we do that? Because if I'll do this paragraph, I'll still get the same results. Why? See, I'll still get the same result. Why? Because this is a paragraph altogether, right? This is a subset of a paragraph. Now, to use an ID, you first of all use the hash key, hash symbol you can call it, then the name of your ID. In this case, it is para1. And now you specify the properties. Now if this time I do background color blue violet, see, only para1 will have the blue violet background color. And if I do it using para2, background color yellow, that's all what my manager wanted me to do. In this case, I'll have this in yellow green color. So in short, what are we able to achieve? We are able to uniquely identify our tags, our elements. I'll show you an example of a no. Okay. So this is an example of an ID. Right? So how do we use an ID? We just use the if we want to reference it, you just use an ID keyword, and for referencing it, use a hash symbol. Okay. Now another scenario. I have this time. I have let's suppose three H2 tags. H2. I'll say this is first H2, and I'll also do one thing. I'll copy these. I'll say this is second H2, second H2, and this is the third H2. Okay. So for changing the font, Jagannath, while you have a property called as font family. If I want to give it, you can choose whatever you want to. Let's suppose I want to give it Times Roman, Times New Roman. So paragraph 2 will have a unique. See, this font is different from this font. Let me also add another font. Let me give it font family. This Franklin, right? So can you see this is a different font, right? That's how you can change. You can use this property called as font family. Okay? Anyways, now this time we have another situation, and what is that? That you want to group these two. Let me take a snapshot. It will be better. Yeah. Now this time you want to apply maybe same font to first H2 and the second H2, but to the third H2 you want a different font altogether. Right. This time you can achieve the same using IDs as well. How will you do it? You'll apply. So one brute force way to do is that you will apply 3 different IDs to each of them and apply these 2 similar properties and this a different property. But a very optimized way to do is that group these in same classes and this in a different ID or a different class. It's up to you. So I'll come here. Okay. So for giving an ID, so for giving a class, you have to use this keyword called as class, similar to what we have in ID, what we had in ID, and name and specify the class name. So class name I'll say heading 1. I'll say header 1, and this also I'll apply the same class because I want to achieve the same design in both these paragraphs. Header 1, and this time in this I'll apply an ID. I'll say ID header 2. Okay. Now in order to reference class, for div you have a hashtag, for class you have a dot. So we say dot the name of your class, that is header 1, and then the properties. Right. Let me also introduce you to some cool properties. So I'll say that I want the color to be as black. Okay. I want the font family to be as maybe Times New Roman. I want the size, the font size to be maybe. You can also mention. You can also use these large and medium, but let me do it large. Okay. Plus, you can also underline it. So for underlining, you have this property called as text decoration. You have multiple properties in that. You can dot, double line through, none, right? None is nothing, that is. So I'll do maybe underline this thing, right? A very cool property. I'll want to introduce you is border. Border you already know. Let me first have a background color. I'll have a background color of aqua, and this border radius I want to have some some border. That is, border radius is the radius from the corners. I'll show you once we see the output. So I'll say border radius to be 10%, 10 pixels. Okay. Similarly for header 2, I'll copy the same, but I'll give it some different properties altogether. So the color would be, let's suppose, red. Font family would be something uh, Times New Roman Georgia. Okay, Cambria. And font would be this time small. Text decoration would be this time line through. That means a slash between the lines. Background color, I want it to be something. This. As by the way, RGB means red, green, and blue. Right? See, it has different mixtures of red, green, and blue. And border radius, I want it to be 50%. Let's try it out. Okay. And let's see the output now. Okay. I didn't give any background color here, so let me also give background color. Background. Oh, I did give some background color. Let me write some more text to it. I'll say lorem. Here also, let me write some more text. I'll say lorem. Here also, I'll say lorem. Okay, anything else? This should be good to go. Border radius, okay. Okay. Now, just see the difference. And one more thing I'll do. Let me just uncomment this so that you can see the difference between this border radius and if you're having no border radius. Okay. Now, see the difference. This is not creating any property. Let me see why. Okay, see, I've mentioned here ID, right? It should be class. Okay. Text size is too small. Let me increase a bit. I'll say 60 pixels. And let me also uncomment this. Let's see. Achha. Now see here. To remove the confusion, let me uncomment these styles here. Okay, that should be enough. Acha. Now see here. Just focus on this part. I had 3 headers, H1, H2, and H3. And these 2 headers have a similar property. And this header has a different property altogether. Right? And that's where classes comes into picture. You can group 2 or more classes if you want to, 2 or more tags if you want to altogether, and give it some common property. How would you benefit? First thing is that your code would be more optimized. The second most important reason is that you save the number of lines of code, because you're grouping it together. The lines of code will obviously be lesser, right? As simple as that. Right. Again, how are we getting this? How are we getting this line through? Because we have used this property called as what? Called as line through. It called as line through. Acha, a very good question by Vaibhav. He says, what is RGBA? We all know what is RGB. Now, what is RGBA? RGBA, if you only use RGB, that is red, green, and blue, it will specify what would be the mixture of these colors. If I also specify RGBA, and if I also specify 0.6 here. Now, what would this mean? This would mean the opacity. As you can see, that this is much more lighter, right? If I increase it more, I do it to 0.8. This would be even more lighter. How is this happening? Because of the property called as opacity. It will be opaque in nature. You will be able to kind of decide the I would say the intensity of the colors, as simple as that, right? If I remove this, then this is by default, and by default, see, it is much more darker now. By default we have 1, and if I decrease it, let's suppose I want to have only 0.2% of the colors that I am giving in RGB. See, this would be much more lighter. So you can decide the intensity of these colors, opacity of these colors in short words. Clear, Vaibhav? Or everyone watching this live session here, is it clear? Are the properties clear? Are we getting a hang of some CSS properties? I'll split the screen for your reference also. Okay, this is the code, and this is the output that we have got so far. Clear, everyone? Yeah, it's called alpha. Yeah. Any doubts so far? Sir, okay, I have a very interesting question by Ratna. He says, sir, is it possible to learn all the properties of CSS? I highly recommend don't try to learn these properties. See, honestly telling, the more projects you do, the more hang of CSS you will get. It will automatically get stored in your brain. You don't need to explicitly learn these properties. Many freshers, what they do is, in their initial phase of learning development, they try to learn the properties. No, don't try to learn them. Just practice, and it'll come to you when. So let's suppose, see, now initially when I used to think of properties, I used to check online resources, but later on, as I started practicing more, it kind of was there in my subconscious memory. It's always there. If you keep on practicing, you'll get an idea of it. You don't need to memorize it. And it is because there are tons of millions of properties in CSS. You cannot learn all of them, right? You cannot learn all of them. Acha. So this was all about internal CSS, right? And see, inline CSS is also similar. So in inline CSS, instead of giving the CSS in the body tag, what you do is you give it in the line itself. So let's suppose this table, right? Or this form, or this image. Chalo. This image, I want to give an inline CSS. So as the name suggests, inline, you will be writing the CSS in line of the tag itself. So I'll say style, and here you mention the properties. Let's suppose I want the height to be of 70 pixels. Yeah. I want. Do you want the width as well? Let's also include width. I'll say width as also 60 pixels. Okay. You have to have this here. Okay. And see, if I now see the image, see, this is smaller in size. It's very much. It's now much smaller than the image we saw yesterday, right? Right. So if I want to, I can increase 170 pixels and give it 160 pixels. Okay. Acha. I told you about the property called as border line, right? The border radius. So now here it will make much more sense to you. Border radius. What I'll do here is I'll have a border radius to be 50%. 50%. Okay, I'm using specifically percent here. Now, can you see this image is it's circular now, right? How is it happening? It is happening because of the property called as border radius. So border radius is nothing but it is it is the radius from the edges. So these edges, right? These edges that we call it. You have 4 edges, and these edges would be the border radius. So if you give 50%, that means they would be reduced to 50%. So this will come something like this, right? You can also give pixels as well. Pixels is it's up to you if you want to, but 50%. Why I'm using 50%? Because this percent is relative in nature. That means it will be 50% to the parent of this image. This is the parent of this image. Let's suppose this will be, let's suppose this is the parent of this image, and this is the image, a circular in nature. Now 50% means that this would be shrinked to 50% from the borders, and that's how you get a circular image, right? And this is eventually, sometimes asked in interviews as well. Let's suppose you have an image. How do you make it circular? So answer is, you have this property called as border radius. You apply border radius to be 50%. And for that there is a condition. So height and width should be same, right? Because it is 7110. See, that's why it was not fully circular. Now this also is 7110 pixels. See, if the height and width are same, then it will be a perfect circular in shape, because it will make much more sense, right? If height is more and width is less, then it will be shrinked. It will not. It will try to be in circular shape. It will not. It will fail at the end of the day. So to achieve a proper circular image, the height and width should be same. As simple as that. And by the way, this we have achieved using inline. So inline, you write it in the line itself. You use a style attribute, right? And you mention the properties. Okay. Fact Fox is, how can we make the image come to the center? For that we have something called as flex properties that we will be covering tomorrow. We'll do that. Dikshita, if you want to give it border radius, so border, if you want to give it any shapes, border radius is the most apt property that you have. Okay. So there are two different web pages, static and dynamic. In short, Shushu, static pages only include HTML and CSS, and if you also introduce JavaScript to your web page, it is dynamic in nature. That means it is now ready to interact with the users altogether. Yes, Ayank, we are going to make a good looking project on day 5. So please be tuned. Stay tuned for that. Okay. Awesome. So let's wrap it up here till today. We have covered a good chunk of CSS properties today. We'll be continue to do that in day 4 as well as in day 5 and make a project. So just make sure to revise the concept that we have done today. Make sure to use IDs, use classes wherever you want to. Just play around with it. And I'm pretty much sure that if you're there till this time, you have some kind of interest in development, and you'll be good to go. So you already have the notes. You just go through the notes also, and if you face any difficulties, as said, we devote first 5 minutes of the session bootcamp to doubt sessions. You can pour in your doubts, and you can help us. You can help yourselves with that. Okay, so that being said, let's wrap this particular day here, and we'll see each other on day 4. Okay, chalo. Bye everyone. Take care and keep revising. Okay.